Good afternoon and welcome to all of you attending this conference, both in person and online, which we have called Talent and Skills to Advance in Sustainable Finance, that hadn't been possible to develop without the decisive cooperation of all the speakers from the first moment. The hybrid format of the event opens it to a wider audience and recovers, even if it's slowly, the direct contact between attenders and speakers. Along the event, we will try to discover what are the skills and qualifications that will be necessary for all those who will be involved in finance and especially sustainable finance in the coming years. To this end, we will be joined by leading experts in the field, and we have organized two round tables. The first one will be deal with the models of training and certifications in sustainable finance. And the second one on practical experience of how to train staff in ESG criteria. Josep Soler, CEO at EF, Financial Studies Institute, and member of the steering committee of the Barcelona European Financial Center for Sustainability, will be the moderator of these two tables, and I would like to thank him for this participation. But first of all, and in the order to situate the issue that concerns us this afternoon, we are fortunate to be able to count on Rahim O'Neill, who will give an introductory keynote speech. Rahim O'Neill is Director of Finance Ireland and Manager of the Sustainable Finance Skillnet. Thank you very much, Rahim, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can hear me all right and understand my accent. It might not be too clear for you, so I'll speak slowly and clearly as I can. My name is Rahim O'Neill. I've been working with Sustainable Finance Ireland for the last couple of years, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a program that we run, which is called the Sustainable Finance Skillnet. So just to give a little bit of background about who we are, first off, the Skillnet comes from a government program, Skillnet Ireland. Skillnet Ireland uses public funding to invest in skills in the workplace. It's pretty straightforward. There's approximately 70 Skillnets in Ireland. They're usually kind of thematically focused. There's a pharmaceutical Skillnet, there's even a space Skillnet. And we, of course, at the Sustainable Finance Skillnet, we do exactly what it says on the tin. It's important to note that the skills are a business support. It's about the government investing in Ireland to be a competitive place, and it identifies key kind of sectors that are, Ireland can take a competitive advantage in. So the finance sector obviously is something that Ireland focuses on. A little bit about Sustainable Finance Ireland. So Sustainable Finance Ireland, we are the organization that hosts the Sustainable Finance Skillnet. We are a national platform in Ireland. We have lots of programs which we work on in the sustainable finance space. Where our vision is that Ireland becomes a leader in this space, and it's now government policy in Ireland that Ireland becomes a leader in sustainable finance by 2025. In addition to running the Sustainable Finance Skillnet, we also run an annual event, Climate Finance Week. It's a very successful event. It started off with maybe 100 attendees. It's now, last year we had about 5,000 attendees, 10 million social media impressions. Actually, some of these figures are out of date that I can't keep up. It's grown so quickly. We also developed, on behalf of the government, the National Sustainable Finance Roadmap. This is part now of the government policy and sets out Ireland's position with regards to sustainable finance. Plus, we've done lots of reports and studies and so on. In addition to that, we've lots of activities. Really, it's a menu of everything you'd want to do. We end up doing pretty much everything. So a little bit about the origins of the Skillnet. So the Skillnet started out from the government of Ireland had an Ireland for Finance strategy. And in that strategy, it set out a couple of elements. One was that talent would be a pillar of Ireland's finance strategy, and sustainable finance would be a horizontal priority. So as a result of that, there was a focus around the sustainable finance skills and talent building. And as a result of that, the Sustainable Finance Skill Net was set up and established. Its very first act was to commission a study, the Skills Deep Dive. Deloitte was commissioned to do that. They did a deep dive study across the financial services sector, looking at skills gaps, looking at what was the views of the industry around skills. And it really gave us a foundation stone, you know, a North Star to follow in terms of what the sector needed. A lot of the values, the principles for how the skill now operates comes from the deep dive study. It's available online. You're welcome to download and have a look. It's interesting now that deep dive study, the methodology, is now being copied and is being replicated. Most recently, Toronto Financial Centre, they have copied this deep dive study, and the methodology, I think, is going to be rolled out in a few other financial centres also. So this is a very boring slide, which is just to give a little bit of details of how the SkillNet operates. So the Sustainable Finance SkillNet is not an entity. We are promoted, obviously, by Sustainable Finance Ireland. It supports companies, not individuals, and that's quite an important nuanced element in that the idea here is to act as an accelerator and to push companies to invest in their own staff by incentivizing that investment. We are not a training provider, and this is often the biggest misconception, is that we don't do training, we don't provide training, we don't walk into classrooms and so on. We do the commissioning or the contracting, or we set up arrangements like helping to establish a community of practice, but we ourselves are not training providers. On the role of what we do, as we are an accelerator, you might wonder, well, why would you invest money in skills in the finance sector? Surely the finance sector, you know, they've got lots of money. So what do they need money for in order to invest in skills? And really the question is about an accelerator is, you know, would it happen if it didn't exist? If our role is exclusively around sustainable finance skills, that's what we do. So we promote it, we're, you know, 24/7, we're thinking about it, and we're advocating with the government, with the Department of Finance, with the central bank, and across banking, you know, asset management, and insurance, investments, and funds. So we're constantly doing this, and so as a result of that, somebody has a job doing it, and it makes it happen, and that's kind of key. I think without that, if you wait for it to organically happen, it doesn't happen fast enough, because the climate is not waiting, you know, for things to happen organically on our side. We identify training gaps, and we invest in those training gaps. So we identify where was a particular need. The type of supports that we give, we will organize, we will coordinate, we'll bring together, you know, the studies, we'll then commission or purchase en masse, you know, courseware, make it available. And typically we provide supports of between 60 and 80% to a corporate entity to cover the cost of their staff to go to training. So it's kind of a no-brainer when you speak to some of the large corporates and you say, would you like to upskill your staff? The answer is always yes, but how much? And then when we're offering them money, then it's an open door. It makes it very easy. But this is really only a way of swinging open the door. I think once you find that when they step through the first time and they realize that they do some ESG or sustainable finance training, then their staff are now a community of practice. They come back to their management and say, we want more, we want to go deeper, we want more detailed and skills oriented courseware. We have obviously a limited budget. We don't have unlimited, so we try and make that last. We also try and spread it across the, you know, funds, asset management, and so on. We've lots of KPIs, and I think one key thing to remember is that we're investing public money, so we're subject to public procurement rules. We're subject to kind of taking care of the public purse, and we have a degree of responsibility around that as well. It's just worth pointing that out. You may wonder why we do this, and of course the kind of primary reason in the sector at the moment is what we call the green regulatory tsunami. It's this tsunami of regulation which is transforming the sector at a breakneck pace. People are struggling to keep up with the level of changes and the implications of those changes in real time. And that's of course, excluding things like, you know, the actual challenges in the climate or the actual challenges in sustainability or social changes and stakeholder demands. There's lots of other reasons why we do this, but the primary one, the primary driver is this. I just point out that I don't actually have a source for this slide. I've forgotten who I got the slide from, but whoever is responsible for it, it's a pretty good slide. This is just some of the kind of achievements that we've done. So we've been in existence now for 2 years fully. We've been able to kind of turn over some significant numbers in terms of upskilling rapidly a large number of financial services professionals. Our focus obviously is only within Ireland at the moment. We had a couple of highlights. We launched some kind of courses and so on in Ireland that had significant uptake. Most recently, I think you probably hear later on about the courseware like the EU taxonomy course. We commissioned that and we rolled it out first time in Ireland. We had a national TCFD campaign, had 50 organizations signed up for that. And we created with UNEP FI, we created a training program with them, which was rolled out to the attendees from that company. And then there's a monitoring and development program for 12 months after that, where the same people who train, they come back together at different stages of their reporting process, which is, it's building again this idea of a community of practice. And Climate Finance Week as well. We support Climate Finance Week, which is just, it's a monster of an event, and it's, I'd highly recommend to look at it and attend. So about 2,400 attendees so far, various different courses covering about 360 companies. If you look at how much we spend on training, it's relatively modest. It's about the total amount we spend in the last couple of years, about 800,000. We get match funding in as well from the companies between 20 and 40%. On top of that, it's created this huge leapfrog, this rapid kind of scaling up, so much so that now we struggle to keep up with demand. Certainly demand is not an issue for us. Okay, so just some of the lessons learned from our experience in these 2 years. I think first off, I'll come to this point of mapping a little bit later as well, but estimating demand, understanding and prioritizing that's a challenge. So for example, do we do a Sustainable Finance 101 course for 10,000 banking staff on, at the front line dealing with customers? Or do you take your top 10 or 15 asset managers and you put them in a room and you upskill those because they can make a huge impact? There's dilemmas there to be addressed. Another point is that the market is very, very immature when it comes to this space. Almost nobody is able to iterate clearly what exactly is their need around skills. That applies to organizations, but also even to individuals. It is a very strange scenario that I would get phone calls from a CEO or board member, but simultaneously I might get a phone call from an associate, a graduate who's entering at the entry level, both of them interested in doing the same course. That's not a sign of maturity, that's the opposite. That shows you where the market's really at. We still have this problem where we are preaching to the converted. We're talking only to the ESG people. We need to really get beyond that to the HR department, the learning and development department, and really get organization strategies in place on learning rather than just people taking an initiative. Initiative is obviously positive, it's good, but we need a little bit more than that considering the challenge. The courseware is an issue. There's not enough courseware. There's not enough detailed courseware. And I'm sure you're going to hear some excellent examples today from some of the other speakers on courseware, but there's certainly a broad need. And on top of that, from the courseware that does exist, there's a lot of generalist content rather than specialist practical skills. What do I do when I go back into my office on Monday? How do I change my job day to day? That's very challenging. And one of the reasons for that is that why would you be teaching it if you were so good at it? You'd probably be making a 6 or 7 figure salary in a large financial institution. You'd know your stuff really well. At the moment, it's very hard to get people to teach what they know. Another thing that we look at is we have these kind of dimensions of change. So we've got the knowledge, got the skills, we also have the behaviors. Most of the courseware that exists is knowledge. It's a whole module full of acronyms, TCFD and NFRD and CSRD and so on and so forth. There's like a huge number of things to know about. But in terms of skills, what do you do once you know that stuff? That's much more challenging. And then in terms of the behaviors, it's very rarely looked at in terms of behaviors. But for example, when we think about risk, the tradition in risk is to look at the past as a predictor of the future. Of course, things like climate change and biodiversity risks, you don't look at the past to predict the future. You actually have to come with a different type of predictive model. So it's a different behavioral type. One thing that we recommend is creating safe kind of Chatham House rule environments for professionals to talk to professionals. In this room, it's the people in this room who have the knowledge, and having the opportunity, and of course COVID has been a nightmare for this, but having the opportunity to share experience and practices is probably a very undervalued aspect of upskilling. We think too much of a classroom in terms of learning and development rather than that opportunity to share with somebody in a similar role. We've partnered with many more than these course providers. I just wanted to shout out a few of them. On this issue of mapping, skills mapping, so what we did in the national roadmap development is we mapped approximately 50 discrete roles across the financial services sector. And we looked at those roles and we said, what's going to change that role? Will it be the taxonomy? Will it be the SFDR? Will it be Solvency II or MiFID II or something along those lines? And once you answer that question, then you can identify, well, what's the training need? What does that role need to upskill? So we did this big mapping exercise. Since then, some of our industry associations in Ireland are looking at replicating that at a more granular level. They're trying to go down to a little bit more detail for their specific sector. So if the funds industry, for example, is looking at it. If there's one thing I would recommend strongly is to do this mapping, whether it be in your organization, in your networks. It's a worthwhile exercise. It helps to identify where the real priorities are, and then it also avoids the scattergun approach, where if you look across financial centers all over the world, people are throwing ESG content left, right, and center, trying to cover everything all the time, but it can be avoided, and it can be a bit more strategic with a bit of mapping. Just quickly on our next steps. So we're looking at the moment, based on that mapping exercise, to develop a few discrete courses, which are professional courses to advance particular roles within the industry. The first one is the role of the compliance officer. The compliance officer was deemed to be possibly the most immediately critical role in sustainable finance. And they have a function with the board. They have a function with as a line of defense within the organization. So we have funding approved, and in fact that tender for that course gets published tomorrow. We hope to have the first intake of students sometime this year. It's key to note that this is not to create a new job. There won't be a sustainable finance compliance officer. This is a pathway to become a compliance officer through sustainable finance, if you get me. A few of the others there. So obviously sustainability reporting and disclosure is a nightmare. You know, to be blunt, there's a huge number of frameworks, often overlapping. I spent a lot of my career in reporting. It's complicated. The data quality is poor. Data assurance, data auditing is poor. Equivalence is bad. You can't compare certain data sets, like with financial data. It's not of the same quality. And yet we all know that reporting and disclosure requirements are coming at a phenomenal rate. This course will focus on the core skills, what will be needed by the kind of sustainability reporting and disclosure function into the future. It will have to be a little bit different than simply trusting what they receive and accepting different data sets from different parts of the organization and so on. It will be a dedicated skill set. We're seeking funding now. We should have funding approved for that next month. A linked course, these are all postgraduate kind of graduate diplomas and certificates, will be in sustainable finance data, very, very closely related on the reporting and disclosure. We think that there's a huge opportunity to address the data challenges around sustainable finance, but to do so will require specialists in the area of sustainable finance data. That will also include everything from assurance and auditing as well. Related again will be the fintech and innovation aspect. We think that there will be an entire ecosystem around sustainable finance data, reporting, disclosure, and so on. That there'll be huge opportunities there. So we're looking at a dedicated course. We have a proposal already for this, for a micro-credentialized course, which will fit into some existing finance and fintech courses. And finally there, we have financing biodiversity. We know that's a particularly immature area. We know it's something that will take time to mature. So that's kind of a conception stage. But we're going to seek funding for that probably in the next 12 months and look to develop that out as well. These are some of, not all of, the courseware that we're looking at developing and investing in. And to be honest, if we doubled our budgets, we still couldn't keep up. Basically, it's that kind of field. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea about where we are in Ireland, the kind of, where we've got to. Your questions and queries, if you want to leave them to the end or now, you're all very welcome. Hopefully that's somewhat useful.
The last 5 issues that you said that you are developing, because for the moment there is no training available for these 5 specific issues. These 5.
Yeah, no, I'm asking about these 5 issues you mentioned exactly. These ones, you said that you are developing a number of these professional qualifications. When you mean this, you are developing professional qualifications, that means you are developing the content, and you will be, the trainers will have this content to do the training, or you are, for professional qualifications, you mean certifications, things like this that you are controlling. What so are you planning to do?
So what we do is we finance the development, the accreditation, and then the delivery of that courseware. So we do the full life cycle of the course. So the first piloting, and then annually we have ongoing support. So we'll put it out to tender. So it's open. You can bid in it from Spain. Basically, it's of the sufficient category, to be open like that from procurement perspective. But yeah, so we will ensure that industry are involved in the developments, so that the content is good, but we don't determine the content as such. We will leave that up to whoever wins the bid, and typically I would expect that most of these would be delivered by consortia. I haven't come across too many institutions who could deliver this, well, at least according to my expectations. My expectations are pretty high, but most of what we've had in terms of interest so far are consortia, where it's more than one university or university plus industry, that kind of thing, where they would look.
Did they go to the bid saying that they have all those people to be trained, either from companies or from students from the university?
Yes.
They have to show?
No.
Okay.
No. So in one instance where we have like an industry association of membership, they have 20,000 members of professionals, we will market it and promote it. So that's part of our remit, where we'll then promote the existence of the course and then support as well with the grant funding for attendance. They don't have to come to us with the audience. We drive that. We will drive that. And so far, our problem is not the audience. We've got a huge amount of demand. The problem is how to meet that demand.
Sorry, again, another question on that. Okay, is the course, the material, people who won the bid for delivering that, and you even show them to whom, but are these courses delivered for free, or there is a cost of the course for each participant?
So
it's a kind of subsidized.
We subsidize, yeah. So year one, typically we cover up to 80% of the attendees' fees, and then year 2 going on, we can go up to about 60% of the cost, as long as the company match funds the 40% or the 20%. Yeah. Okay. So it's a good incentive. Like we don't have issues on that side. We don't get any reluctance, because there's a huge demand. really the missing piece of the puzzle, I think missing part of the question is, does the expertise exist out there to deliver the content? That's for me is the bigger challenge. I think that's where you see the need for a consortia, because you have to bring in experts from 2 or 3 different places to deliver.
Thank you.
Sorry, we have a question from the chat. Jean-Philippe Stiger demands, besides relevant technical skills relevant to ESG, don't we also need more future literacy, transversal leadership skills that work beyond traditional business silos, etc.?
Was the question, do we need skills that go beyond, for example, sustainable finance explicit? Our mandate is the sustainable finance skill net. So we focus on addressing the specific needs within the finance sector for a couple of reasons. One, in terms of impact, finance sector can be transformational, it underpins the real economy. It's not the real economy, but it underpins the real economy. It can make a lot of difference fast. So on the basis of kind of choices that we make around impact, that's why we focus on the finance sector. It's true, there's particularly with the likes of the reporting course, you could imagine the skill sets, the common skill sets, how to do materiality or comparability of data and assurance and so on. That's the kind of thing would be very relevant across business generally. But in terms of other skill sets and so on that are needed, future orientated. To be honest, when we look at this and we think about where's the horizon for the relevance of this, we're talking 2025 to 2030. What's good in 2025 is no longer sufficient in 2030, considering that how challenges will evolve. So we're really we're trying to keep up, just with the existing challenges, and it's probably outside of our remit really to look beyond that.
Yeah, sorry, again, another question. What about SMEs? What about the knowledge that SMEs needs to show that they are complying with criteria for sustainability and so on? Is that part of your target in some of these courses or previous courses?
Yeah. So there is a focus within SkillNet Ireland, our kind of parent SkillNet, on SMEs for obvious reasons, because again, it's the real economy and so on. We haven't had the time or resources to get down to that level. With one exception, we have been able to work with financial advisors, which are typically small enterprises, a few people, often as a broker for a larger entity. We have been able to work with them. We really make our decisions based on impact, with the funds that we currently have available. There's some interest from the banking sector to set up a program where the bank becomes the arbiter of change with their customers, who are the SMEs. And that might be a pathway, like a multiplier effect, where we focus on the bank and then it gives them the opportunity to focus outwards. Our resources are probably the least when it comes to that kind of scenario. So yeah, we make those choices based on kind of impact, sustainability impact, and then impact of where our kind of spend can make the biggest difference.
You said that financial advisors are part of your target. Is that for the QFAs? I think in Ireland, you got the qualified financial advisors. Is those people going to be required to have certain knowledge, certain skills for ESG or sustainable finance?
They have some requirements. Yeah, they do have some requirements in terms of, I wouldn't be able to list them off the top of my head, but it was interesting that it was a large investment management firm in Ireland who worked with us to contract training for their brokers. They made the decision to bring in their brokers, and they trained approximately, I think, 100 of their tier 1 brokers, and then they trained, I think, 30, 40 of their trustees. So yeah, they brought us in to actually focus on them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rahim. And now is the time for the face table. sit there.
Okay, thank you very much to all. First of all, let me thanks again to Mr. Rahim O'Neill because he really touched the basic points I think we were looking for the keynote speech in this afternoon. No? Then I found it extremely interested, and I'm sure people who is with me in this first roundtable also found it of extreme interest. Okay, we are going to the first roundtable. Let me maybe first to add some thanks, if you allow me, Luis, to the Barcelona Stock Exchange. I think we are here doing this hybrid event, presential and online, but it's the first one after 2 years in this institution, in the Barcelona Stock Exchange, that they were so kind to allow us still in these conditions of being both presential and online, but at least the first event after 2 years that is taking place in this room, which is already something. Let's hope that in several months that we will see the hall full of people who likes to be here in person. Thanks to the Barcelona Stock Exchange, and thanks to all the institutions that are supporting the event. The objective of this event is clear. We want to first, what are we doing in the country about training, certification in the financial sector? That's why we really thanks the best practice examples we are taking. The first one is done by Mr. Rahim O'Neill, but in this first roundtable, we'll have also the example of Sebastian Rink of Frankfurt School of Finance that I will introduce right now. Well, this roundtable is addressed to understanding what do we have here in Spain on training on ESG and sustainable finance. What are the most important certificates? Both AFI and EFPA here are certifiers at the same time. We have Eva Hernandez from IEF, who is a trainer, as by the way, as AFI is as well. Who is composing this first roundtable? Well, first of all, in the order of being more far away, there is first of all is Sebastian Rink. He is a green and sustainable finance expert at Frankfurt School of Finance. Frankfurt School of Finance is at the same time a university addressed to finance and banking issues, but he's at the same time part of the Frankfurt Financial Center, who is member, as we are in the Barcelona Financial Center for Sustainability, members of the Financial Centers for Sustainability Network, managed by the United Nations. Sebastian, as I said, is a sustainable financial expert working for several years in the field, and he advises the Net Zero Banking Alliance Germany, and he is even pursuing a PhD on sustainable finance. Thank you, Sebastian. I don't know if you can hear us and you are already connected.
Yes,
Sebastian?
I can hear you perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. Welcome to the event. Then we have also virtually Álvaro Drake Escribano, who is the General Secretary of IEB, Instituto de Estudios Bursátiles, in Madrid and director of customized training of the entity. He's a professional of the financial sector with more of 30 years of experience in capital markets. And he, I understand recently in the last years, also involved in sustainable finance training. Okay, much closer to me is Claudia Antuña, which is an Analistas Financieros Internacionales partner, investment analyst, and also part of the investment analyst at AFI Global Investment SEGIC, which is an asset management company also linked to Analistas Financieros Internacionales. For those who don't know, Analistas Financieros Internacionales is probably, we can say, in the last 30 years, the largest or the most relevant consulting firm in the financial markets in Spain. Thank you, Claudia, for being here in real terms, for your presence. Who else do we have? We have Andrea Carreras. Andrea Carreras is the director of EFPA Spain, which is the entity in Spain of the European Financial Planning Association. She has been for EFPA, I think, already for 18 or 20 years. 20 already? Congratulations, 20. It's today. Then 20 years the director and the first responsible person for EFPA Spain. EFPA Spain is really a success story. EFPA Spain has close to 35,000 certifying people, or certifying professionals with the certification already still up to date. Andrea was before in Credit Suisse, managing several portfolios of companies and so on. Okay, and last but not least, Eva Hernandez. Eva Hernandez is head of sustainable finance at IEF, Financial Studies Institute, a member of the steering committee of the Barcelona European Financial Center for Sustainability. Eva has a degree in economics and actuarial science, an MBA in Pennsylvania State University. He's well, an expert in different fields in the financial sector, but recently she has worked a lot in sustainable finance and ESG, and she is the main author of a couple of programs or training programs of IEF in sustainable finance. I think a great panel. Probably I will follow the same order I make the introductions. Then I'm asking just for all the participants to use 5 to 7 minutes initially, and then we will have 15-20 minutes for a debate and questions, and probably a debate among themselves, and even if we have some time for a last-minute intervention of all of you. Let's take first or give the floor first to Sebastian. Sebastian, you are starting from Frankfurt, I guess, with the first intervention. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, and hello from my side. It's a pleasure being here today. And I think we can all agree that we have a very large skills gap that we need to close if we want to make sustainable finance work. And I think I have now a very nice opportunity to mirror a little bit Raheem's presentation, but from the side of someone who is actually developing and providing training and education at the Frankfurt School. So we are a university, so we provide university courses, bachelor, masters, MBAs, but also a lot of executive education. And all of that needs to get up to speed and needs to have a lot more sustainable finance content in it. And what I will do, I will briefly give you an overview of what we see at the Frankfurt School as kind of main trends and give you a feel of how we are reacting to it. And maybe the first to start off with is diversification. So we see that it's not enough anymore to have this one and only sustainable finance course. That is definitely not anymore catering to the needs of the market. So we see that there is a need for basic training, so getting people up to speed on what is sustainability, what is climate change, how do we deal with it. But then there's also the need of getting people onto a more expert level. And at the Frankfurt School, we are providing both. We have very basic entry-level trainings, but also more advanced trainings. But it's also a lot of work because you need to keep them updated, and you need to work on them because there's a lot of things happening in the market. On the same time, we see that there is an increased need for specific information for people having it at specific times. So there is need for deep dives, for example, which we did with Sustainable Nation Ireland on the taxonomy, for example. And there are different trainings that we also provide to companies that on request on specific topics. So there's a really strong need for diversification. But at the same time, we see there's a need for harmonization. Because as sustainable finance gets more and more into the mainstream, we see that the skills and the way skills needed and the way people talk about sustainable finance needs to become more harmonized so that it's getting more efficient. So we see that there is a clear need that specific groups within organizations get specific skills, so that the risk manager knows the basics on risk, that the front officer or the relationship manager knows how to talk to a client on sustainable finance. And so there's a need to get to a harmonized understanding of what needs to be in which position. And here in Frankfurt, as the Green Sustainable Finance Cluster and the Net Zero Banking Alliance, we have published a paper on exactly that, explaining what the main aspects are that a training should cover in a bank. And this harmonization is important because only through harmonization can get costs and implement these trainings down. Then we see there's a need to get beyond this pure content perspective. We see a lot of training covering content, but now that sustainable finance is getting mainstreamed, we also see the need to get more into a process perspective, meaning that more and more people do not really understand the details of sustainable finance, but rather need to understand how to use it in daily practice, how to use firm-specific tools, how to talk to people. And this is quite difficult for us as a provider of trainings, because this means if we want to cater to a client, we need to understand how they operate, how they work, and then provide the training to that. And this also plays into the role of having more and more individualized training. So we have more and more companies, banks, asset managers coming to us asking for specific trainings on their specific sustainable finance strategy, on the needs for their specific way they're operating. This is super expensive and super time consuming to develop, but it's also very interesting to see, obviously, how these organizations work. And then there's the last trend that we see, and there's a trend to spend as little time as possible and resources on these trainings. And that I see is a little challenging because sustainability is a very, very broad topic, not well covered in the past. And it's just not sufficient to take 5 or 6 hours to bring your staff up to speed on this topic. So there is definitely a need and also a willingness in the financial system, but also in the real economy, to accept that these trainings are longer and take more time to think and to ask questions and to get into the material. That's also related to formats. So we see obviously that online trainings that are more scalable are very much needed and very much wanted, but they're not very interactive so far. So what we see is when we really want to get people up to speed, it's better to have individualized parts, to have on-site parts, so to get really to talk to people and to get into the feeling of what do they need and how can we cater to it. So we see there's a need for diversification, harmonization. We see a trend towards more process-driven trainings. We see individualization and not the willingness to invest too much time. And this is the market that we try to cater to. It's challenging. And maybe to close off, there is always a challenge for us. The willingness to pay is not very high. And there's, I think, quite a misconception between value and price at the moment. So people try to keep the cost low, but it means the content is also very low. And Rahim cater to that very, very well in saying, okay, the good people that want to make money, they just go into the bank and do this stuff themselves. And so we as a training organization are not able to get these people on board. So what I would highly recommend everyone is deciding on what do I want to get. Do I want to get some standardized training and get this for the broader audience? And for the smaller audience and very highly specialized people, pay more, but then you get also more value for your company. And with that, I thank you for this opening statement and look forward to having a discussion with you.
Thanks very much, Sebastian, and also for complying perfectly with the time given to you. Sorry, I don't think I was listen. I was saying thanks to Sebastian for a very interesting speech, also for these recommendations you made, and for complying with the time. Alvaro, who is also online from Madrid, you got the floor.
Yeah, good afternoon, Giuseppe. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, first of all, to the European Financial Center of Barcelona for inviting IB to this meeting and to this roundtable. Thank you very much. Talking about the training in financial sustainable and on all these new field, if I may say, of knowledge and specificities, excuse me. I was saying regarding about teaching, I would like to divide this into stages. The previous stage in which all that had to do with financial sustainable, all that had to do with the big corporation efforts for fighting the climate change and carbonization impact, etc., etc. The first stage that I divided from the second one in the Summit of Paris in 2015, I would say that in this first stage, it was a moment in which all these efforts, all these actions were included in a best effort, good practices, criteria, and actions. What I mean is that we, IB, as a university and business school center, were attending that just, let's say, including in our university studies, all that reality, explaining and teaching our students about the climate change impact, about the decisions that in the financial industry were being taken, let's say, like investment fund managers were making a classification of the projects or investment funds when they were investing, excuse me, in terms of sustainability. And then I also think that long tradition years ago, when the fund managers were reporting to their clients, we are investing in this or that fund, and we have a classification for this or that funds in terms of the sustainability and the sustainable that the projects they are investing, how sustainable they are. However, all that, in our opinion, changes when after the Summit of Paris, all that efforts for fighting the climate change, all those efforts for assessing the carbonization impact in the economy changed it into, let's say, a regulation movement. I heard a participant before said or called a tsunami of regulation. And I do think that this affects also the training industry about this. And we were changing from just teaching our students explaining what's happening in the financial industry, taking into account that the IEB is business school and university focused very much in the financial sector. Okay, we are very much specialists in training and making programs for the financial industry. And then what I was saying is that after the summit in Paris in 2015, all that efforts were going to be moved into a regulation tsunami, taking the words before used, and our approach to that changes. We set up three years and a half ago a specific unit and a specific area for sustainable finance and innovation, in which we were, let's say, allocating the different programs we were developing for trying to training the financial sector mainly and firstly, and later on different in-company programs about all these matters that have to do with sustainable finance. The financial industry for sure is the first affected, and it's because of that that we are focused initially on them when we are developing trainings. And but not only on that, but also we are very much convinced that for sure we have to training to train people and to train the teams in the financial entities about the new responsibilities that the regulation is going to ask for, and about the new skills that the new regulation is going to demand. Okay, but also in our understanding, when seeing the reality in which we are moving in, we do think that it is key that the big decision makers, that the big manager, the high level executive committees, etc., be fully convinced not only that they have to fulfill a tsunami of regulation that is coming over, but to be absolutely convinced about the necessity of really transforming all the production processes into a more sustainable way. And about especially the risks of not doing that. Okay, as such, we are now training in, let's say, 3 different layers. First one is, let's say, an awareness raising short programs, if I may say, that are mainly focused to board of directors, to executive committees in big companies, for making the decision makers aware about what is happening, what is coming over. And I have to say that regarding that, we have found out very binary, if I may say, if you let me say that word, very binary realities. There, we have found out some companies in which the executive committees and the board of directors were very much aware about what is happening. Imagine what a big electricity companies or companies like that, or a corporation like that, they are absolutely aware about all these ESG and EOS requirements, etc. But at the same time, we have already found, excuse me, some companies in which the executive committee levels was very unaware, very, for me to say, ignorant about what is really coming on, not only in terms of regulation, but also in terms of risk and the medium and long-term stage, right? We have this first layer for the big decision makers. Then we have a second layer of programs more in detail. I wouldn't say very much specialized, because at the end of the day, the regulation is being developed at this point in time, and I could say that it's not materials enough for making a master of 500 hours or something like that. But we are making some more specialized programs for about 40 or 50 hours for specialists in the companies, not for juniors, but giving them tips and clues, and even training them about some regulation that is already in place. There are too much regulation, too many. There are many points that are coming on, and in Spain, for instance, in 2022, we have already in place some requirements, legal requirements about not financial reporting and things like that that have to do with the financial sustainable of the.
Alvaro, 1 minute, please.
Excuse me?
1 minute, Alvaro.
Yes.
No, I mean, you still got a minute.
Excuse me, you said. I thought there was some kind of problem. Yeah. Okay, and then let me finishing, because I don't want to miss this, regarding the certification that I think is one of the points of the roundtable. For us, certification is really a key point for the human resources and talent departments, for having independent assessments about the skills needed for the different places. I do think that in this ESG area, certifications are still in the first stage. We know very much EFPA, and we have here with us Andrea. Nice to see you, and we collaborate with them. And EFPA has a very interesting, one of the first ESG certifications in Spain. And I do think that, as in other areas in the financial industry, certification in ESG has a very long way to be developed.
Thank you. No, it's okay. Maybe at the end, Of course, for any other detail, you will have more possibilities, and also during the debate. Thank you, Álvaro, for your very interesting presentation. Let me go to Claudia Antuña of Analistas Financieros Internacionales. Okay, for your 7 minutes. You see that I am a little drastic. Huh?
I'll try to stick to the time. Well, thank you first of all, and thank you for organizing this event. I'm so happy to be here with all of you and sharing all this knowledge or experience about sustainable finance. I will just only one slide just to share with you how was our experience, our journey. Is it working? Our journey in terms of sustainability and in terms, of course, in training and financial education. So I will start with the beginning. Let's say we can say that 2015 was the year of sustainability. Of course, sustainability is not something new, it's something that goes beyond 2015, but it was a very important year. It was the year of the Paris Agreement. It was the year that the SDGs were launched, and it was actually the year that the whole society and the financial industry start to talk about sustainability. So a few years later, in 2017, we as AFI in our School of Business, we started to have few seminars about sustainability, because at that time we saw that people were more interested in debating and discussing about sustainability and what this meant, because they didn't see sustainability as a topic to be actually trained in, and it was more something more philosophical, let's say. So we started to do some debates on the industry, and we start debating on how sustainability was affecting financial policies, among other things. But 1 year later, and I think that a few of the speakers that came before me talked a lot about regulation, and for us, this was as well one of the break-even points in the journey of sustainability, and was one of the key pieces that actually accelerated the whole journey. And it was regulation. In 2018, we have the action plan on the European Commission on sustainable finance. So these actually made all the financial industry aware about the necessity or the requirement to actually take serious sustainability and take it into account. So from that point, we started to see a lot more of interest in sustainability and in training. And actually in 2019, we launched our first program on sustainable finance. And it was a program very global that wanted to give a holistic vision on sustainability. It was meant for every single professional in the financial industry. So it was about from the basics, because we understand that we need to know, for instance, what climate change is, what carbon footprint is, what biodiversity is. Then we need to know about the regulation, but we need to understand very well what are the basics, because you know that sustainability is a dynamic field. It's something that is alive, so it's completely changing. So we need to understand really well the basics so we can actually make our own considerations about sustainability. So we have this first program, and I remember in the first edition, I think we were like about 15 people more or less, and the profiles of the people were very different, but there was something that they shared. There's something they had in common, that it was they were somehow related with sustainability in their job position. So they were interested a little bit on sustainability. Also at the time, we saw that the asset management industry was one of the industry that was leading the way actually in terms of developing, and they were doing a lot of work on disclosing about sustainability. So we actually started to work a lot with some of the key players on the asset management industry. And then 2020 came, and for us, that was one of the main years, one of the years that we have more training on sustainability. 2 years had come after the regulation. So this was a requirement we had in 2021. We had one of the most important requirements about regulation, that was SFDR. So actually all the financial entities need to understand what sustainability was about. So at that time in 2020, we trained more than 6,000 students. We did a lot of in-company training, and I share what I think it was Sebastian was saying about the requirements of in-company trainings, because companies needed to understand how sustainability was affecting directly themselves in their companies. We train different financial entities, banks, insurance companies. We train as well non-financial companies, and we train as well financial regulators, because even regulators need to understand how these European regulations are materialized in the Spanish territory. And we also did a lot of training to the board of directors. So we see a change from 2019 to 2020 that the students we had were very different. We have students that were related to sustainability, but this was no longer about corporate social responsibility. This was about risks management. This was about portfolio management. This was about a strategic business plan. So it was key for the whole financial industry. So where are we now? Well, we are still doing a lot of courses, trainings in terms of sustainability. We now have 5 specific programs on sustainability and finance, and that's something that we saw as well, that we came from a very broad program. The first one we had, and we still have this one, and it's the 5th edition or 6th edition now. That is a very broad program, but we also saw that there was some demand on more specific programs on portfolio management, or in climate change. We have a specific certification on financial risks related to climate change. We have some certifications on more on the financial advisors relating to sustainability. So we started to develop different certifications, much more specific in different fields. And we really think that probably if we have this conversation again in 1 year now, maybe this will change as well, and we will have some different programs, because this is evolving every single second. So we have to speed up and try to accommodate to the demand every time. So I will finish here, and I'll be happy to discuss with my colleagues afterwards.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Also very right to the point and right to the time intervention. I'm going to give the floor now to Eva Hernandez from IEF. Your machine, and then we will leave for the end Andrea, which is the mainly the certifier here in the panel. So then Eva, you got the floor.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And I would like to discuss 3 things. The first is what are the activities of IIF, the Institute of Financial Studies. Then I will talk about our experience in the training on sustainable finance. And at the end, I will give some notes about where I think like the training is going and the needs are going. Well, about IIF, IIF is an institute that provides financial education mainly to professionals. We have 3 main activities, and I want to discuss the 3 activities because we have been including the sustainable finance in the 3 of them. The first one, of course, is the training to corporates, like in company programs, and also training for individual professionals, open programs. Then we have an activity of financial divulgation, the ODF. There is an observatory of, well, I would translate directly, observatory of financial divulgation. And the observatory publishes reports about financial topics and also organizes events to spread the financial knowledge. And lastly, we are very active in financial education, financial literacy. And this goes to all kinds of people, from adolescents in schools to university students to independent professionals and even small entrepreneurs. So I was talking about all these activities because in the last few years, we introduced the sustainable finance topics in the 3 of them. The first one actually was the Observatory of Financial Divulgation, and we've been publishing reports on this kind of topics for a few years now. But what we have observed is the increased amount of interest by professionals. In line of what Claudia was saying before, like some years ago, many people, like 3 or 4 years ago, not so long, many people had never heard about this, and it was very new. And it was really like the 2018 regulation, what opens like the interest of the professional people on all this. So on trainings, we also started the first trainings in 2019, 2020. We started with very small online pills, like very introductory issues. And then we developed a course that is really devoted to financial advisors. And it's very generalist training. It's like the course tries to give a 360-degree view about all that is important to know for somebody to understand what is sustainable finance and what are the main topics. So very generalistic, and it includes all kinds of topics, all kinds of sectors inside the financial industry, like from banking to insurance, asset management. So very generalist, like introductory training in a way. And on this program, we have an online program that is always open for self-study, but on the blended edition that also has classes, we have 3 editions now. We've seen like the increase of interest and the different kinds of people that attend the course. And finally, on the financial education, like gradually, we are including these kind of topics. And I'm amazed because it's a lot of interest, like both by the professional people and also by the adolescents, students. Like when we talk about these topics, it's always like big interest on all this. So now, after having discussed IIF and our activities, I like to mention a bit where I think like the financial training on this kind of topics is going. I think like the generalist training is here to stay still, because still there is a big gap of knowledge from financial professionals, because it's what like the people who come to our courses are mainly financial professionals, although we're starting to see like corporate people attending the courses. So we see two trends going forward. One is like more specialized, deeper kind of training, more focus, and also, as Rahid was saying before, with the practical side, for people to be able to go to the office and apply this kind of knowledge. I think this is going to be the next phase. Now, still in Spain, I think like the financial industry is dealing with all the regulation. As the regulation gets clearer, I think it's going to be like a specialist training on areas like compliance, like risk management, asset management, all these kinds of things. And the other trend is corporate training. And like from the corporate side, I think it's bridging the gap between what is the business, that in the business they have the sustainability training, and what is the finance. And I think on that is the financial industry who is pushing the corporates to give information, to provide data, to comply with certain sustainability trends. So the corporates are at the receiving side, and they have to develop to provide all that. So I'm thinking about departments like the managers, and departments like the CFOs, like the finance departments, like the investor relations. All those people are going to need more specialized training as well. And the last link is going to be the SMEs, but I think the SMEs, they will need to see that they need this, and we are not there yet. So this is mainly our thoughts. And I think the conclusion is that the financial training has to evolve as the industry gets more sophisticated. As the level of sophistication increases, like as trainers, we have to adapt to that.
And with this, I finish. So,
Thank you very much, Eva. Fantastic. I think sustainable finance gives some good mood to follow the time in a perfect stage. You know, normally you have a panel like this, and someone takes 2-3 minutes more or whatever. But this is extraordinary. It's probably thanks to sustainable finance that the people wants to be really sustainable in time as well. Okay, just to finish the panel, we have Andrea. Andrea, I give you the floor.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody. I would like to thank Barcelona Centre Financer Europeu for inviting me to participate in this roundtable. And as Josep has just introduced, I am the representative in Spain of the leading standard professional body for financial advisors and financial planners in Europe. We are known for our 4 qualifications, the EIA, EIP, EFA, and EFP, designed to cover ESMA guidelines. And in Spain, since 2017, the 4 qualifications were included in the list of valid qualifications to inform and advise financially to clients. They were included in the list of the CNMV, the Spanish regulatory organism. In addition, since 2019, and in respondent of the market's demand, we launched 2 more qualifications which cover the knowledge for the real estate and mortgage sector. Since March last year, since March 2021, that we offer our EFPA ESG Advisor certificate, since we noticed a higher awareness of clients to invest in sustainable products to contribute to get a cleaner and better world. So ESG stands for environment, sustainable, and governance. I have prepared 6 slides, which summarizes the main characteristics of our certificate. These first slides are the main 8 modules of our syllabus. The ESG Advisor certificates corresponds to 3 classroom days and to an EQF level 5. In this second slide, we can see the distribution of our certificate holders per country. This is the data up to December 2021. So, for example, in the case of Spain, we have more than 1,100 certificate holders. EFPA Spain has always maintained the independence between the training and the certification. So directly, we don't provide the training to obtain the certification. We have 4 accredited centers here in the round table. We have represented 3 of them. So we have EF, AFI, and EEB. In addition, the working, we have a scientific and academic committee composed by 2 experts in ESG, Andrea González, who is the subdirector of Spain CIF, and an external examiner, who is Sonia Perez Castro from the asset management Robeco. This working group's aim is to design exam questions. They correct the exam, and also they help to implement the certificate in financial institutions. What about the exam? Our exam is an online exam. It's composed of 30 multiple choice questions, and to pass the test, it is necessary to pass with a 70% of the correct questions. The cost of the exam is 100 euros, but included. And next exam, it will take place tomorrow. So we have 165 candidates taking the exam tomorrow online. In this graph, I wanted to represent the 4 calls we have done up to date since March last year, where the orange column represents the number of total candidates that took the exam, and the blue column represents the past candidates. The average pass rate is an 80%. This is a summary of the number of total certificate holders we have in EFPA Spain. So the yellow line, the LFFAE, stands for the real estate and mortgage certifications. We have the blue lines where we have the EIA, EIP, EFA, and EFP, which are the MiFID qualifications. And finally, we have the green line representing the ESG certificate. All of our certificates need to do CPDs per year, or certificate holders need to comply with CPDs in order to maintain the valid qualifications. And in the case of the FPA ESG advisor, the number of CDPs required is 8 hours per year. We are now working on a higher level of a higher ESG certificate, which we are going to call it FPA ESG expert. I don't know if I have
coming soon, huh? Coming soon.
Yes, coming soon.
Well, thank you. As well as the others members of the panel with the time. Thank you, Andrea. Okay, we don't have much time. As a matter of fact, we don't have any time because we already overpassed this 5:45. But let's devote, I think, 5 to 7, 8 minutes at least to some debate. Let me put one question to Sebastian. Sebastian has talked about homogenization, the need of homogenization in training for sustainable finance. Sebastian, can you tell us how you work towards homogenization? And may I also talk the panel if they have certain idea about how to do that?
Yes, happy to give you some details on that. So the point about harmonization is we see that there are basic needs in the market that everyone has to do, and there are basic skills that everyone has to have, and that there are a certain language and a certain style of doing sustainable finance that everyone needs to follow in order to make it efficient. And what we have done as a Net Zero Banking Alliance, we have clearly outlined guidelines of what trainings for banks should include, clearly saying these are the modules that should be involved, these are the key aspects that should be covered. And through that, we've enabled the market where now different providers of trainings come to us at the Green and Sustainable Finance Cluster, get the information on how it should look like. And so through that, we drive some market harmonization. At the same time, we have brought together a couple of banks who are now working jointly to get a training for themselves set up at a very basic level so that they can all take this training. And in the second step, individualize it for their for their institution-specific needs.
Thank you, Sebastian. Anyone wants to mention something on harmonization, homogenization? Or we go to the next question? Yeah.
Well, just I think it's very important to go through that pathway, but it's true that certifications and will help a lot, and I think that regulatory requirements will help a lot to identify what are those key questions that Sebastian was mentioning. But I think that when we do training, not virtually, I mean like physically, we have seminars and we have sessions, we can also go from harmonized sessions to very specific questions that the students can have, so you can make it a bit more tailor-made to their requirements.
Excellent. Alvaro, you are far away. I have to take care of you because
thank you.
You want to mention something on that, or shall we go to the next?
No, regarding harmonization, I coincide a lot with Claudia because I do think that which skills are needed, which skills will be needed. That's a point that have to do with the development of the regulation, as it has been already said. And I do think that in that sense, the certifications like the EFPA are really a key point because we are harmonizing the training that the entities are expecting to receive. Okay, we are training big banks teams, and sometimes they are asking you for the skills and for the knowledge that must be taught, if I may say. And on the other hand, when they have a reference of a certification, this harmonized very much because of their fund managers and banks are looking for that, what that certification is offering. Even more when the certification are taken by the regulators. That so far in the ESG, the regulators have not they can make a decision on that. But I do think that could be about harmonization.
Let me throw a couple of more questions, different ones. First one will be, when do you think if the regulator will require or some qualification for ESG or sustainable finance, or do you think that sustainable finance will be included in the, for instance, in the MiFID qualifications, or in the for banks in the mortgage credit or in the insurance? Is that going to happen, or we are going to see a kind of qualification only on ESG and sustainable finance required by the authorities, by the European authorities and the regulator? And a second question you can also answer is that Eva mentioned something which is interesting, is to say, okay, you have been very active in financial education for different groups of young people or adults, doing basic financial education included in the financial literacy program. In relation to that, well, to know if any other entity has done that, but also important, what do you think is still offered in advance of demand on ESG and sustainable finance? And are we going to find again in the financial sector with a asymmetric situation where the sector is quite aware of sustainable finance and the demand not so much? What do you think about that?
In answering to your first question, Joseph, in the SQC at the European level has already included some program of the ESG in the actual syllabus of the EFA and the FP. And the first exam with this module included will take place in 2023.
Okay, anyone? With that, yeah.
Just to add what Andrea has just said, I think that the regulator, apart from actually requiring some specific issues to be included in the programs, it is requesting professionals to be aware about sustainability, because they have to put it in practice in their day-to-day activity. So, for instance, we were talking about MiFID, when they will have to ask about sustainable preferences to clients. The regulation mentions explicitly that there might be the case that the advisor needs to explain to the client what sustainability is about or what their preference can be materialized. So definitely regulation is putting pressure on the training of professionals.
Sebastian, any experience on training the demand, the public, the customers in Germany on sustainable finance, of course?
Actually, I'm regularly doing trainings or workshops with students in high school, which I find is quite interesting. But I see that actually there is not so much need to train people on sustainable finance in a sense. They just need to understand what sustainable finance is, but at a more broader sense, need to understand what the financial system is and how the financial system works, and how they also through the financial system and their financial decisions can change. And I think that is the key what we need to get on the street here, also in Germany.
Okay. Eva, we are changing the economic situation with the war. Do you think that is going to help to impulse sustainable finance and the need for sustainable finance, or on the contrary, are we going to see some delay, in the implementation? What is your feeling?
I think this is a very good question, and it's a question that many people is talking about these days. And there are like two fronts of people: those who think that it's gonna delay everything, the situation right now, because there are other pressing issues. We have a lot of inflation, we have an energy crisis, so there is all this talk that this is gonna delay like this sustainability interest, but also there is like a big push to become more energetically sustainable. And if you remember that the first catalyst for the sustainable finance has been the environment, and a big chunk of that is the clean energies and the effect of the fossil fuels on the environment. I think the fact that now we're having all these energetic problems is really like a big catalyst, like to really invest a lot on this and become more like in Europe. I'm thinking about Europe and about all this European action plan on sustainable finance. I think for Europe there is a big driver to become more independent regarding the energy, and I think this goes through more sustainable sources of energy. So I think it's going to need a lot of investment, and it's going to be a big push for sustainable finance.
Thank you, Eva. Let's expect that is going to happen. Just the last 30 seconds, 1 minute, if anyone wants to take the floor to say something else, or. Oh, okay.
Which will be the difference between the two programs on ESG, between the ESG advisor and the ESG expert? And we have here the chairman of our SQC is to say that we are still working on it. Probably it will be the duration on the program, and of course, instead of 8 models, it will have a couple or 3 more.
Then expected soon, but not so soon, no? Okay. Okay, anyone wants to take the floor in Frankfurt or in Madrid?
Thank you, Josep. Just taking the point you said before about the role of the regulators for including the ESG certification, your ESG requirements in their demands, in the requirements. I do think that will be in MiFID for sure regarding the investment and investment funds management industry. But I do think that this goes beyond, and it will be not only MiFID, but also there are other areas like risk in the credits and things like that in the banking activity or in the real economy that will go beyond the MiFID and the Spain, the CMD regulation.
Okay, then thank you very much. I think we passed the time. Thank you, Sebastian, Alvaro, Claudia, Eva, Andrea. Many thanks to all of you, and sorry if we were a little pushing the time, but that's what the events happens. And we will in a couple of minutes, maybe, or 3 minutes, start the second roundtable. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Sandra is connected. Sandra, hello, good afternoon.
Hello, hi.
Yeah, we hear you, perfect. Okay, second roundtable, 3 panelists also of very high level. Sorry, my microphone was closed. The second roundtable is also with includes 3 panelists of very high level. First of all, from the foreign section, we are very lucky to have Sandra Rocker, which is Director of Wealth and Corporate Distribution at Iris Life Investment Managers. Good afternoon, Sandra. She is a member of the executive management team. She holds overall responsibility for Iris Life Investment Manager Wealth and Defined Contribution corporate channels, and we are very happy to have you as a best practice in Ireland on sustainable finance knowledge and skills in one company. Thank you for being part of this panel. Second, we have also somewhere, sorry, I didn't call him to see if he's here, Javier Pérez Hernando, corporate lending at BBVA. Javier, are you here?
Hi, Josep. Yes, I am here.
Excellent. No mistakes in the connection for the time being. Perfect. Thank you. Welcome, Javier, and thank you also for participating in the panel. Much more closer, I got Matteo Ghezzi, which is ESG Strategy Director of Banco de Sabadell. He covers the position since the creation of the Sustainability Division in Banco Sabadell in 2021. Matteo has been already for several years in the financial sector, in Deloitte, particularly in Italy. Well, he's an Italian, and you will probably recognize still with his accent in English. I hope so, because in Spanish, you still recognize he's Italian. Maybe in talking in English.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. You will say me later. Yes.
Thank you, Matteo. And it's great that you overpassed your illness yesterday and you are here with us in presence, no? in person. Okay, we can start as in the previous roundtable, giving the floor first to the foreigner invited person, Sandra Rocket. Then Sandra, for 7 minutes, as you know, you got the floor.
Thank you very much, and lovely to be here and to share our experience. So for me, I suppose sustainability has been a business-wide transformation over more than 2,000 employees. And in fact, one of the challenges and I think the opportunities we faced, and one of the biggest enablers of the success that we have had to date, has been absolutely to do with talent and skills development and enablement. I agree with many of your previous speakers from the previous panel. And what I wanted to do today was maybe share some practical insights, but maybe focus more on some of the value that's being created as a consequence of training. So I suppose when we entered into this strategy, we recognized that training was hugely important, but I think what we underestimated was the commercial value that training can bring to an organization in terms of progressing a sustainability strategy, in terms of attracting and retaining talent, and in terms of building a reputation in the market. So I really want to focus on those because I think those balance the potential cost of training. So for us, it's a continual program of activity across our business. It's very much a pillar of our sustainability strategy that has been running in a very meaningful way over the last 3 years. Our approach was threefold. The first was that we recognized with sustainability, we needed new skills, new expertise. And so we created a central responsible investment team who would work within our fund management business and work with our business. But they had a very specific ESG background. They had specialist qualifications and experience in issues like climate change, like environmental management, like environmental economics. And they brought with them a skill set, a perspective, and an understanding of the whole area of sustainability that we felt really complemented our fund management teams. The second element was we focused on upskilling our entire business. So again, if I was to reflect on our strategy, we felt that at the outset, we only needed to train certain teams, our fund managers, for example, or our sales and distribution teams. But when you think about what is required under regulations, when you think about achieving a much bigger ambition around sustainability, you really need to be thinking about your entire organization. And so we have rolled out training across the 2,000 people, but we have recognized that different teams have different needs in terms of both the level and the depth of the training. So we have a very tailored approach. And there's 3 levels of training. There's foundational knowledge, which is just a broad intro into sustainability, what this means for our business, our customers. Then there's enhanced training, which is more technical training in role-specific areas like financial advice, like fund management, like quantitative analysis or risk and compliance. And then we've introduced regulatory training. So just the breadth of regulations that we're now faced with and their evolving nature and very technical nature, we wanted to ensure that we had very strong understanding across our business of those aspects. We started with voluntary training, but we now very quickly moved to mandatory training. And we've received very positive feedback from that. And we're also seeking formal certification from industry bodies for any training that we deliver to our customers or our partners. And then finally, as a market leader in Ireland, we saw it as our responsibility, but also, I'll be honest, an opportunity to enhance our relationship and our engagement with financial advisors and trustees by rolling out bespoke sustainability training to the broader market. And one of your previous speakers talked about financial advisors, and I would absolutely echo that the demand is now coming from the advisor network. They've all become incredibly aware of, the forthcoming changes in terms of the advice process and are looking to their partners for that training. And in terms of the challenges we faced, well, I think first was identifying a program or courses that we could really roll out to our business. Certainly at the time, and we're still facing this challenge, there is limited available courses that met some specific needs. I agree that that has changed a lot over the last number of years. But I suppose our engagement with Sustainable Finance Ireland was fantastic in that regard. And we worked with them to identify a need to design and develop several new, innovative and bespoke courses. And we benefited from the grant finance, which really ensured that as a corporate, we could maximize the rollout potential of these courses. And we're continuing to lean into sustainable finance today to develop new courses on newer aspects like net zero, which again, we will pilot and roll out in Ireland. But I really wanted to close my opening by saying to you that for me, sustainability is such a unique strategic initiative to work on. And it really talks to a number of different business objectives over and above regulatory compliance. And training and upskilling has really enabled us to realize a number of very real benefits. So the first was by upskilling our teams, we've positioned ourselves as a market leader in responsible investing and an innovator in the Irish market. We were able to transition over 40 billion of AUM from traditional passive strategies to sustainable investment strategies. We've had a real impact in terms of sustainability profiles of those strategies. Our flagship funds became the first funds in Ireland to meet the SFDR Article 8 definition from March last year. And we've launched a number of new proprietary solutions. And I think really importantly, we've enabled and we've mobilized our teams to make really accelerated progress on this evolving space. And the second is regulatory compliance. And as we all know, there's huge regulatory interest and oversight on sustainability issues. And I suppose given our position in the market, we face that engagement with our own regulator. When we engaged with our regulator, being able to point to and evidence the amount of training that we had rolled out across our business gave the regulator a huge amount of comfort in terms of our commitment to this strategy and just how seriously we were taking it on behalf of our customers. And the third element, and this caught me by surprise, is that by rolling out training to our business, we really connected our employees to our core purpose around being a sustainable leader. We have seen such significant feedback from our employees in terms of their appetite for training, in terms of progressing their own careers and future-proofing themselves in an evolving industry. But even if we think about the operations teams or the compliance teams, people have really valued connecting with the impact that we as a business can have in respect of broader issues that are really important to them as individuals. And this has become a huge factor in terms of attracting our talent, but also retaining them. And then finally, by rolling out that training to an external market, we have absolutely built and solidified our relationship with external intermediaries who now see us as that market leader, that innovator. And we've built our reputation with them at an incredibly deep level. And I suppose, again, at a broader level, we've also enabled the Irish market to adopt and enhance their own approaches to sustainability. And I suppose when I think about sustainability as a strategy, on the one hand, it's about doing right for your business, but there's a bigger picture here, which is that it's absolutely the right thing to do. And we all need to work together to mobilize the financial industry and the capital markets to make meaningful change over the next coming years. So I suppose what I've said to you is that training is hugely important, but by doing it right, you can achieve a lot of positive business outcomes that will give you value and advantage in your respective markets.
Thank you, Sandra. Maybe the summary of your intervention could be for all those not convinced yet. You have here all the arguments, no, to be convinced. Sorry, may I ask you one thing, Sandra? Being a leader, you start earlier in the process of getting your organization together and with the right knowledge and skills. But that has required probably also to start earlier with CPD, because the sector is changing a lot, and every year we have new things, and you have to update all your data.
That is correct. And so what we are doing at the moment is we designed a foundation course initially, where our managing director opened it to really set the scene, but also set our company purpose. And then we had foundational knowledge. At the moment, and we're working with Sustainable Finance Ireland, we want to develop an annual training certification or course similar to an AML course that we all do on multiple occasions, that we could roll out with across our business and have that as being a minimum level of annual certification. But you're absolutely correct. The continual upskilling agenda has been very significant for us.
Thank you. To keep the leadership, I guess, no?
Correct.
To do that. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Stay with us for a while we give the floor to Javier Pérez Hernando. Javier, you here?
Yes, good afternoon.
The floor is yours.
Thanks, Josep. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot, Josep, for inviting me to this event. To share our experience that I try to summarize 2 years in 7 minutes. So right. It's not going to be easy, but let me share my screen with only a few slides to make it easier to follow this 2-year experience, okay? You could see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So, okay, 2 years ago, our CEO, now the president, established sustainability as in our core. So this has been very interesting journey because we are facing, I don't know, but more than 10 transformations at the same time, agile and others, new ways of working, data, technology, so many transformations, but sustainability, I think, is the most important one. And I work in the learning department. My team is the owner of this project. And we are very lucky because sometimes learning is, everyone understand that it's very important, but not always learning is at the heart of the strategy. No? So we are very lucky because our CEO understands this very quickly and with facts. No? So what we have on the table, no, to do it in this project. Okay, it's very easy to explain. Is to build sustainability capabilities globally. No, very easy and very hard at the same time. To do that, we established like 4 pillars, no, that are very important. Trying in order to make a model that has to be consistent and has to deliver in 2 months when we start, no? And since this very quick start, we have been delivering contents constantly, as you say, because it's something that is growing, and in both in 2 sides, no? First of all, the field is evolving a lot, no? You already said during the event, but also the companies are evolving and their profiles, the employees, the different characteristics of the company is evolving. No? So it's very important to evolve the model. The first pillar is that we establish, so we design a three-layer learning map, no, in order to have like 3 different levels of expertise in the organization, because we are more than 100,000 people, and not all the people are in the same states, no, and also they don't need the same knowledge, no, and this is very important, as you already explained in the event. But also, we want to build and design learning tailored journey. That is also important because, as I said before, not always the need is the same. So we work very hard and shoulder to shoulder with the different internal clients we have in the company, but also with the sponsor areas we have, because sustainability is not like the other disciplines we have in the bank, for example, Agile, that we have a discipline that is focused on the owner of this content, no? Because sustainability or sustainable is an adjective, no? That is different depending on the area you apply sustainability, no? The third pillar is that we want to build a certificate and gamify progress model, no? That this is so very important, gamify also because we have a lot of transformation at the same time, so we need to engage the people, but also we have to be very demanding and trying to establish a very meritocracy or model based on meritocracy for the people, certifying the knowledge in all the stages, no? And trying to engage the people from the certification model, but also with the gamification. And the last one, that is the last one but not the least, is that our model, our mindset is focused on 4 stages, no? That is the way we learn, that is learn, do, teach, and share. And this is also very important because we want to incorporate in the model real application to the projects, but also trying to share the knowledge among the employees, no? That is also very important because sometimes it's peer-to-peer. And if we want to grow fast, not always the content has to be delivered by a vendor or by ourselves, but also from employee to another employee, no? And this is something that is key to grow viral, no? Okay, so this is the gamification we have. This is only 2 screens that I have glued together. Sorry, because it's in Spanish, but we have in both languages, also in Turkish, and we have like 3 different levels, as I say, the 3 layer, and also a very simple and guide progress, no? This is our model. This is only a screen to show that. And what is it? Well, this is part of a project that we call the camp. The camp is our experience for the reskilling. We have 14 expeditions. That is our transformation we have inside the company, 14. So as you see, we have to build a very engaging model. And it's a global gamified experience to promote the development of the required strategic capabilities to accelerate the transformation at BBA. The employees take a leading role because they decide what they want to study. Also, the areas can decide what are the core ones for everyone, but employee can take a leading role. It's a level guide learning. It's open learning ecosystem also because we want to make easier for the people to design their own paths, and also it's flexible, no? Because you can follow at your own pace. It's also important that there are different areas according to the level of specialization that is required. For example, as Sandra has said, we have like 3 levels. The first one is what we call Valley, is for beginners. And we have here one core program that is Sustainability Express, that in less than 1 hour, they have to understand the key points of the strategy of the sustainability transformation. No? For example, our strategy, the main areas, what we understand what they have to understand about sustainability for BBA, how we decline sustainability in our organization, also different sample in the company, and everything is explained from external perspective, but also from internal perspective with more than 20 different employees that talk during the program, because it's less than an hour, but more than 20 videos. No? Also, it's complemented or supplemented with extra resources and also with an internal certification. After completing this, they can reach the second level, that is the mountain, the intermediate level, that is for practitioners. That have two different parts. The part that is for everyone, that is fundamentals, and the second one that is specific training depending on your area, is a business area or headquarters area, but also it depends on how deep you want to go in with your learning. No? In the core part.
We are last minute, please.
Oh, okay, perfect. And if you are certificated in this level, you have the expert level, that we have certification, specialized path, training for the senior management, and a pool of international business programs that is focused on different areas. Okay, and some numbers we have trained during these 2 years more than 75,000 employees. We have obtained more than 300,000 training hours, and we have in our catalog more than 100 training programs. And this is all. I give you back the floor, Josep. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Javier. Okay, fantastic. This is the view of BBVA. And from the view of BBVA, the view of Banc Sabadell with Mateo. Mateo,
thank you. Thank you, Josep, for inviting Banco Sabadell and myself to present our experience. Before sharing our experience, I want to leverage a little bit on what Sandra was saying. Clearly, ESG is a huge business opportunity, but I want also to talk about the importance of sustainability in the society and the role of the financial sector. I truly believe that educating sustainability is very important right now. If you think at the words that define the Sustainable Development Goals, that are planet, people, prosperity, peace, and partnership, these words are critical right now. And to me, evoke the necessity that society has to define a common roadmap to evolve and to reach these economic and social changes. And we, as banking sector, are a central player in this transformation. Is also, as Rahim was saying before, we are connecting all the different actors in the network, and we have the power to transform and multiplicate the impact in the society, as we can offer financial and investing solution to make both companies and individual transition in sustainability. So for Banco Sabadell, the commitment in sustainability is really important. We make public our commitment last week, and our commitment is action-based. That's why we have defined our activity based on 4 strategic pillars, that is, evolve our institution as sustainable, support our clients in transition to sustainability, offer investment opportunities that contribute to sustainability, and also work to improve the level of sustainability and cohesiveness in the society. Clearly, if we want to achieve these targets, we have to work on the sustainable skills that we have in the organization. And as all the other panelists says, we have also 3 levels training programs. I think they differ a little bit from the others on the scope of we have defined, as we have a first layer that is for all the organization where we want to share the knowledge of sustainability in general. We have a second layer that is for specific roles that tackles sustainability issues. And then the first layer are ad hoc programs that we launch to tackle specific issues. To be more precise, in 2021, we have launched the first layer. We launched a program for all the organization to share a common knowledge on sustainability. We have already reached 90% of employees that attend the course, in order to let them aware of the importance and the basic concept of sustainability, but also to let them know what's our view and strategy on sustainability, explain which are the most important milestones that we have already reached, and make them aware of which are the pillar of our sustainable plan that we have launched for the future. And we have a public commitment that this course should be attended by at least 95%, as we want that it really goes deep in our organization. Then we have a second layer of training program that is more a certification program that has the goal that all of us that are involved in tasks that are related to sustainability has those skills that are required to perform their jobs. We have decided to divide this program into different processes, because we decide to offer the possibility not only to the specialists, but to other organizations to attend to the first layer of this course, where we go a little bit more deeper in the concept of sustainability, and we start talking about sustainable finance. We tackle both the part of context, talking about the most important international initiatives and the regulators, like talking about the Euro taxonomy and how it affects our offerings with a eligibility guide, how we define which products are green, and how we will offer both the financial solutions and the investing solution, and explain also what are the ESG bonds. But then we go further and we will launch a more specific training course for those that require very specific skills within the organization. And we will go a little bit more further, not just only tackling the offering, but goes deep on those issues that I think that are critical, like, for example, all the part related to risk, like explaining how to assess ESG risk, how to monitoring with the most significant KPIs, which are the ESG risk, how to include this risk in our risk management framework, and also how to assess opportunities in ESG and how to be able to manage them. Also, one of the things most critical, we have already talked before, problem that is the data, because you need to understand this heterogeneity of the data, and you need to be able to collect from your clients, but also to reach the most significant ESG providers, because you need those data in order to be able to attend your clients. And also the importance of a disclosure of the data, because we want to avoid greenwashing and social washing, and we want to be able to communicate the exact data that we are of what we are doing. And finally, we want also to be aware of how the market is recognizing our track record, trying to understand how the ESG rating companies, agencies are evaluating our progress in ESG. And finally, I think it's very important to offer to the organization specific programs in order to tackle specific issues that we might need. That's all.
Thank you, Mateo. quite to the time, like the others. We had the opportunity to understand how Irish Life Investment is doing in Ireland, and also to very important entities of the country, BBVA and Sabadell here, how they deal with skills and training on sustainable finance. Let me devote just a few minutes, because theoretically that's the time we were supposed to finish the panel. Let me ask together three questions which are similar to the ones I asked already to the previous panel. You answer whatever you want of the three, but one, two, or three. But please note that I want to know a little bit more on you, on how you deal with homogenization in the training field. We dealt with this problem before. Second is, how do you think that present situation, the present situation, is going to affect your business on ESG and sustainable finance? If it's going to accelerate it, as I said, or is going to refrain a little bit. And third is, okay, we are talking about how you, as the offer of financial services, are trying to adapt to the ESG and sustainable finance world. Are you not afraid that your customers will not follow this thing? Then it is going to be again a bit of asymmetry between what your employees, your people knows, what the customers knows. Whatever you prefer to answer, or you want to answer all the three. Sandra, may I start with you?
Yes, thank you very much. And if I may, I might take the third one, because this was a question that my board posed to me. We, I suppose, as a leader, had to make early decisions in terms of incorporating sustainability across our funds. And what we saw in the retail market was that the individual customers were not looking for ESG. They didn't understand it, and they certainly weren't making financial decisions based on whether or not a provider was sustainable at an entity level, or indeed whether their funds were sustainable. And I was challenged by this, because I saw that in the institutional markets, this was certainly gaining an awful lot more traction. And I also felt that at an individual consumer level, people were becoming much more environmentally and socially conscious in terms of decisions that they were making in their personal lives. In Ireland, for example, it was whether you took a plastic bag from your supermarket, for example. And so we did some research back in 2019 to try to understand customer preferences. And we have just relaunched that same survey again and received the results. And what came through in terms of our survey was that customers, while they didn't understand sustainability and may not have been positively bringing that up with their advisors, when the questions were posed to them as to whether they felt that the types of providers and financial products that they would like to be invested in or associated with were sustainable, there was a very strong positive outcome there. So I suppose there's a number of learnings. Number one, I would challenge that in the retail market, there is an expectation that we as asset managers are not certainly, contributing to egregious corporate behavior or investing in in companies that are damaging the environment. I feel there's an expectation that that's the case. I feel that the IDD changes and the MiFID changes are going to bring sustainability to the fore. And when asked, customers are going to respond in a very positive way that they do want sustainability as part of their product. And to the last panelist, I would also echo, and we are embarking on a mass market public campaign to promote the power of investing responsibly versus any individual action we can take in our own lives. And I do feel that there's an overwhelming surge to move to sustainable investments that will come from the retail market. And I do feel that the IDD and MiFID changes will be a pivotal point that will drive an awful lot of action. And I suppose us as an industry, commercially, we want to be on the right side of that. But also, back to our responsibility as, owners of capital, I do also believe we have a bigger purpose here.
Thank you, Sandra. Javier, would you like to comment on one of these issues or all of them?
Okay, I forgot the second one, but I can
No,
do with
the second one is just
third.
the second one is just if the present situation we are suffering in the last 2 months is changing a little bit the scenario of sustainable finance.
I think that the first one, we don't try to homogenize all the training. In our different geographies, sometimes they focus on social inclusion, for example, in Latin America, LATAM. And for example, in Europe, it's more climate change. So we try to tailor the path depending on the needs and the focus they have in their geography. So we try to have some common contents, but it's not our only focus because we want to have this model. With the second one, I think, Josep, you have answered, and other speakers. I think this is going to be accelerated. This is a human transformation. First was the digital, and second was the sustainability. But beyond both of them is human transformation. We need an environment, we need social inclusion, and we need a technology focused on humans. So this is something that is being accelerated. And the third one, I think that we have 2 different clients, the companies and the mass market, the retail, and both demands this transformation. The first one, the companies need an advisor, and we want to be this advisor for them. And it's very difficult because it depends on the sector, and we have to train in different sectors on how the sustainability declines in their sector. So I think they demand it, but they don't know where to start. So we are working a lot with them, and we are going to evolve with that. And with the mass market, I think it's going to be faster than other transformation that is focused on technology, because sometimes the technology is difficult for the people, but this kind of aspect, everyone is thinking about that. No, maybe more people is focused on the work that they are going to give for the grandchildren. Maybe the parents is focused on their children, but also in their own lives. But everyone, I think, is demanding, but maybe they are not so prepared. But I think in the short term, they are going to be prepared. So we always told that if we are not prepared ourselves, it's going to be very difficult in the very short term.
Thank you, Javier. And then, Mateo, your turn.
Okay, I will also talk about the 3 of them. I think that you need a common ground of knowledge in order that we speak the same language altogether in the organization. But then I agree with the others. You need to diversify the skills and the knowledge depending on what exactly your task and your needs. I think that what's happening right now is going to accelerate the transformation. I agree with what Eva was saying before. At the end, this brings not only the conscience from human rights, but also the necessity of energy transformation. So I think it will be push the demands on both the investment part of the offering in order to have as much as ESG solutions available for investors, and also the part of investing in financing and renewable and efficiency solution. I agree with what Javier was saying before. The difficult part in the offering, in the financial offering, is the way that you are going to advise your clients and support them in the transition, because many times they lack the knowledge of what they really need. So you really have to assess them and support them in this transition. But I believe that the demand is there. and it will be grow up a lot in the following years. And the challenge is that, as it was said before, you have to be ready to take on this challenge and be able to support the transition.
Thank you, Mateo. And
You're welcome.
I think this is the end of the table number 2. Thanks, Sandra, again. Thanks, Ariel. Thanks, Mateo, here for all your contributions. I think all of them very interesting. And that's the end of the table. The floor is to the president of the Barcelona European Financial Center for Sustainability, Mr. Luis.
Thank you, Josep, and thank you very much to all the speakers. I think that talking about the knowledge needs, the necessary certification, and knowing what financial institutions and trainers are already doing is the sense is very important to all those who work in the financial sector or who want to do some in the future. I think that it has been a very useful afternoon, and I hope it will help everyone to know where the training and knowledge needs in the world of sustainable finance are going. Thank you very much once more to everyone who joined us at the Barcelona Stock Exchange this afternoon and to those attending online. Finally, it only remains for me to thank the Barcelona Stock Exchange for hosting us. Thank you very much.